Of that.
Gotta make sure that there we go. Gotta have my cool background on. All right, just gonna spotlight my panelists here. Well, there you are. You're up here with us now. One of my panelists came down with COVID, and my substitute is currently fetching her lunch. So hopefully we will have them show up as well. And then we are waiting for a couple of the additional students. So please hang on. We'll see who we get today. We have some very unfortunate weather this afternoon, so I'm sure that there might be a few delays. Please forgive me my yogurt. Especially since I'm currently coming to you live from the equipment closet. I don't know, that's not a bad background. Maybe I should leave that up.
It's really not. That's a nice closet.
Oh, it's not too big, but it is very well organized. My students just cleaned it, so it doesn't look nearly as bad as it could. I feel like we should have some hold music for the start of the presentation. I think I've gotten one of my other panelists here. Hello to everyone coming in. We are just getting some of our panelists in because we're working with some students and other employees. We are just getting them to registered into the Zoom. Please stand by. We're sorry for the lack of hold music. I see one of them. There she is.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us, Rebecca.
Of course.
All right. So we do have a couple additional student workers who we are expecting. We'll give them another minute or two to join us, and then we will continue on. Let me also check the main sessions and make sure that no one's having any problems. Forgive me if the folks who are already in this, see a doubled up email from me, but I'm going to try and delete those people who are already here. Okay, while we are waiting for anyone else to arrive, Britt and Robel, is that how I pronounce your name? I want to make sure I get it right.
Yes, please.
Marvelous, thank you.
Yeah.
How are your mics so you can hear you? Can you hear everyone?
Yes,
Can we
yes.
get a sound check from you?
Can you guys hear me?
Great,
Yep.
you both sound terrific. Thanks. Rebecca, you too, please.
Yep.
Marvelous, thank you very much. Okay, we'll give them one more minute and then we will begin. Thank you for your patience, everyone. Up there's, yep, okay. All right, it's 12:35. Looks like we are missing one or two panelists. We'll see if they appear, but we won't wait any longer for them, just so we won't be rude to those we have in our audience right now. I'll keep an eye on my email here just in case they pop up, but otherwise we will begin. Okay, thank you everyone for coming to the HETMA panel on student workers, student worker feedback, what we can do better when it comes to hiring, training, and maintaining your student employees as staff, and also hiring them and having them continue on into your workforce. So we'll go around and introduce ourselves right now. My name is Johanna Pearson. I work at the Wentworth Institute of Technology, and I was a student employee at my alma mater, the University of Southern Maine. And now I also oversee and supervise a team of AV students, and I also assist on supervising the IT help desk students. So I will go around and ask you all to introduce yourselves. I'll start with Britt. Go right ahead. I just got an email from one of the students, so we'll go ahead and introduce yourselves and I'll get you in.
Great. I'm Britt Yenser. I'm the Director of Event Technology at Moravian University, which is in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. We're a small private institution with FTE of fewer than 3,000.
Okay, and Robel, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Robel Gebrselassie. I'm an AV technician here in Northwestern University in Evanston. I was an intern at Northwestern University for 6 months, and I just started my new job here a month ago.
Go ahead, Rebecca.
Hi, I'm Rebecca. I'm a technical support specialist at Wentworth Institute of Technology. I oversee about 45 student workers at the help desk, and in my undergrad at UMass Boston, I worked at their help desk for about 3 years.
Great, thank you very much, everyone. I am just getting an email from one of our other active student employees that are trying to join, so I just sent the link. We'll see what happens. So until then, we'll just start with some conversation. So what we're going to do is just have a little bit of a warm-up topic to discuss some of the concerns and processes that are common in everywhere that have student workers. And then hopefully we'll go on to take some audience questions from the chat. So let's get going with that and start with, so first of all, we want to know about how how were you recruited yourselves as a student worker, or if you are a manager, how do you recruit your student workers? And just tell us about either what attracted you to the position or how you try to attract student workers to your position. Anyone who wants to start particularly, or I'll just point at you and pick. All right, no volunteers. All right, Brett, you're up first. How do you attract student workers to your open positions in your department?
Sure. So, and I could actually speak to the first piece too, because I was a student employee at Moravian. That's how I ended up in AV, and I was recruited through a job fair. So typically the university hosts a little job fair of anyone who has student employment opportunities. Craig Underwood, who I believe is on this call right now, was at the table, and I walked up and asked, "Oh, media services, what is that?" And here we are. So that's how I ended up in AV to start. And currently I recruit similar manner through the job fair. I also post flyers around the campus. I utilize the university's social media. So I'll give information about the position to our marketing team, and then they will create a post on the university Instagram, Twitter, etc. And word of mouth, really. And honestly, I think word of mouth is our strongest recruitment tactic, in that I tell my student employees who I have on staff, go back to your dorm in the lounge and talk to people about your job. When you're on the shuttle, talk to people about your job. Like, I give them very specific instructions. When you're in this place, grab this type of person and tell them what's up. And that's been really successful.
Okay, great. Yeah, word of mouth is something that I would love to discuss in more detail later in this panel. Robel, how about you yourself? How did you start as an intern? And then what attracted you to both the student position and to staying as a full-time technician?
To be honest, I never thought AV system is a career. So
isn't that so interesting how
yeah.
many of us just didn't have any idea about AV until we started as student workers?
Right. So I don't know if you guys heard about Europe. Europe is a non-organization, helps young people in a certain age between 18 to 29, help them develop their soft skills and hard skills like an IT. They have a different tracks, like an IT project management. I was in an IT track, and I did that for a year, and I was matched to Northwestern University, and knowing nothing about AV coming in here was Troy. So I did that 6 months, and I fell in love ever since. So here I am, and I got that converted months ago. So yeah.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, what about yourself, Rebecca? What attracted you as a student worker, and what do you think is your best route for attracting student workers in your current position as a student supervisor?
Yeah, so I was an IT major, and on the back of a calendar was a QR code to apply to the help desk there. And I was like, perfect, this is my major, I'm just gonna do that. And it was a Google form that just asked for my name and year. And I got an interview the next day and got hired. So that was pretty cool. When I'm looking for student workers, I also do stuff that Britt does. So like social medias, posting up flyers, job fairs, and also a lot of word of mouth. A lot of the students will come to me saying, I told my friend about this job and now they're interested, or my roommate is interested. They know that I work at the tech spot. So it's a lot of word of mouth. I try to sort of advertise when we're hiring on like admissions panels, because sometimes I'm a part of that, to get freshmen started so that they can stay with us for, all 4 years when they're in their undergrad.
All right, so let's talk about word of mouth then. So Robel mentioned it specifically that there are a lot of students who don't think of AV as a career, for sure. I know that a lot more do think of IT, because a lot of computer engineering students or computer science students or management students will often know more about a computer help desk, for example, than they will about AV. But what makes word of mouth so valuable on a college campus when it comes to recruitment? What do you think? How can you get that word of mouth out amongst your students? And what do you think makes it so valuable as a recruiting tactic? We'll go reverse this time. Rebecca, we'll start with you.
I think that having a positive experience at the help desk or just, working events with you, Johanna, anytime a student comes in, you're welcome, like helps out an event, they have a fantastic time. And they're always just talking about sort of what they did that day. And I think that draws their friends in. And it's also just good experience to have on a resume, even if you're doing help desk or AV stuff. It's just good experience that all students, I feel like, are seeking.
Okay. Rebel, what about you?
Piggyback from Rebecca, like she said, have an event to interact with students, especially for me, example, like knowing to this industry, nothing about it. And the manager played a big role in this, having no experience. So interact with the students will be having an event is stuff like that will help.
Okay. Britt, what about you?
Yeah, as far as why is it valuable, I think that when you're just advertising on paper or on the website or, whatever, it's not giving the full picture. So to have people go out and actively talk about what they're experiencing, to echo what Rebecca was saying, if students are having a valuable, fun experience working for your department and they go out and share that with others, well, then that is going to give you more of a draw and people are going to be more interested than just reading a job description somewhere. That human face-to-face is going to pull people in, I think, just more naturally. And as far as how do you get the word out, how do you effectively use word of mouth? Like I said, create those fun experiences, make sure that you're actually offering a valuable experience that people want to talk about and pull other people into. And I like to try to recruit strategically from what I call feeder programs. So we have a pretty strong music department on our campus, which lends itself to some particular AV skills. So I'll pull in a couple of music students and then they'll go back and after class, they'll talk about their job. And I just kind of keep pulling in those music kiddos. So
isn't it interesting how many people in both AV and IT are frustrated musicians? We have a whole office full of frustrated musicians. I also want to welcome to our panel, Ray, who is joining us. Ray, if you want to go ahead and just introduce yourself quickly. Thank you for joining us, by the way. Sorry for the delay in getting you the right link.
Oh, no worries. My name is Ray Dowd. I work at Yavapai College as a student worker AV tech, but actually the lead AV tech for the organization as well.
Marvelous. And we were just talking about how we got recruited as a student worker and what attracted us to the position. Would you mind letting us know how you started in that position?
So I actually applied for help desk and they just opened the position. And in the interview, it asked me if I was interested in doing this. Since I've been working in studios for about 15 years prior. During the pandemic, I kind of decided I want to get out of the industry because it's pretty vulnerable. So I'm switching over to IT. So it kind of married the two things I was doing. It's a nice transition.
Great. Yeah, thank you for that. And we were also just discussing the power of word of mouth when it comes to recruitment, which it sounds like that you had a little bit of that yourself when you showed up to the interview and then they told you about a completely different job that they had available for you. So thank you for joining us. And so then my next question I had on this list was, did you consider this job as part of your career path? But it seems like almost every single one of us immediately went into that position that was offered to us afterwards. So that might be kind of a moot point. But would you like to quantify, when you started in your position as a student worker, did you in fact see it as the first step on your career path? Were you just wanting to make some money? Were you just wasting a little bit of time? Clearly it did end up as part of your career path, but did you think it was going to when you began? Rebel, let's start with you this time.
I always say I put knowledge before money. And when I started, like I say, knowing nothing about AV system, I never thought that would be my long career. I was interested more to software developers, so AV was not like my thing, and I never know that. But uh, going step by step was my managers. They were very helpful and very thoughtful, and they give me all the resources I want. Taking courses and certification, I end up loving it ever since, and never know what the pathway will take you, but I'm right here right now. So yeah,
Great. So that was a surprise to you then. You weren't expecting it yourself.
very surprised.
Right. Rebecca, what about you? You said that you were majoring and you found that relevant to your major. Were you expecting IT to be IT support specifically to be part of your career, or were you just thinking that that was helpful because it was related to your major?
A little bit of both. I knew that my track was in specifically computer forensics, and I knew that when I graduated, I wouldn't be able to get into a forensics role. So I was sort of thinking if I could do this help desk job, part-time when I graduate, I could do something similar full-time. So it sort of was a stepping stone.
I'd like to note that we actually hired Rebecca right out of college. So
3 weeks after I graduated, it was I think I had like a half a week break between doing my capstone and then actually starting here.
So good job.
Thanks.
Britt, what about you?
Not at all. And I wish that I could be altruistic and say it was about learning and it was completely about money. It was the highest paying job on campus, and I was a first generation student paying my own way through school. I maxed out the amount of hours that I could work to the point where I was actually made a part-time employee of the institution so I could work more hours. It was very intense.
Nice.
And I mean, I clearly very much enjoyed the job. I got a lot out of it, and I was studying to be an English teacher. And I was really interested and passionate about how you merge technology with education. And I ended up teaching for 2 years because that's what I had studied to do. It's what I wanted to do. And then for a variety of factors, ended up circling back around.
That's it. That is an interesting step to your career path. Well, welcome back. We're glad to have you in the AVIT world. And Ray, what about yourself? So you've had an interesting career path on your own. You had started in the AV world separately. Did you have another degree or another student job before you were working in professional AV?
No, I think last time I graduated with an AA from a college, and I just went right to work. Yeah, sure. I do think I am going into IT operations, so I think I will end up switching over to help desk as soon as I get this department set up and running well.
Well, I'll let you know if you go to a higher education facility, they will see a lot of value in your ability to do more than one thing, whether that is, AV and IT at the same time is very valuable, especially since we've got the usual HETMA background radiation of AV is IT. I can hear Joe screaming it like he's not even in this room probably, but I can hear him saying it. So there's certainly a lot of crossover in both of those positions. Okay, so now that we've talked a little bit about our, yes, thank you, Mike. I see your hashtag there. So now that we've talked about what might attract you to a position, whether that is part of your money, number one, of course, very important. Whether that is part of your study, Rebecca talked about her interest in computer forensics and having a job in IT support that would support that. Rebel talked about his internship program specifically, and Ray is changing his whole career path and wanted the education and career experience in there. So then that's how you get attracted to the position. What keeps you there? So how do you train your students to be effective IT students yourselves? What parts of training did you consider most valuable? What skills do you want your students to develop, or students, what skills have you developed that you will feel valuable in the future? And then we'll go on to talk about how to keep those people in those jobs and possibly hire them later. Ray, yourself, what skills are you developing as a student worker in this new career path that you think will be valuable to your career in the future? What training is helping you? What skills do you want to get?
Well, so on the IT side, what's great about the job is I'm in the very same room as our help desk. So I'm able to jump in and help everybody out and still pick up all of those skills, not as in depth as I'd like to. So I'd, eventually like to move over, but yeah, just kind of being present in the help desk and being able to see things come in constantly, see what constant problems are, learning how to fix those, whether it's hardware, software, or just user interface, explaining something to someone, help them get things figured out, and actually being able to jump in on calls that are requiring us to go on campus. And I can go out on campus and speak to users and help them figure out their issues and all of that, and try to handle as much as I can.
So you're finding a lot of value when it comes to training and hands-on experience rather than,
Oh, absolutely.
I don't know, video support or an LMS class or anything like that. You prefer to just get in there and get your hands on it.
Yeah, really the quicker I can understand all the variables, the quicker I can get to a solution. I really like being able to do that.
Robel, coming in as someone who didn't have prior AV or IT experience, what do you think about that? Do you find that there is value in book learning in that respect, in getting, I don't know if you have any certifications once you finish your internship program, or do you think that the best way to learn AV and IT is just to get your hands on it?
I'll say hands-on it, especially because troubleshooting, you need time and you need your hands-on. Since I'm like a full-time right here right now, I take some students with me to learn when we have a system failing here, and that way will help a lot of students is to learn, since AV is most troubleshooting, to go on the podium and see what's going on in there. Troubleshooting is the most important, and of course, I'm in the middle of it. Studying the CTFs. That will be one of my goal. Take that test, but mostly I'll say troubleshooting is the very helpful thing that I become successful. So yeah.
How many student workers do you take with you at once when you go out on a troubleshooting training?
It depends. Like we have, let's say in that table, if we have 2 students, one will cover the call and one will be going out and wherever they want help. So I'll take one at least a day. Yeah. So yeah.
Good. Sometimes I take 2 or 3 all in my little ducklings in a row as I go across campus to and this is how we fix this problem.
Yeah.
So Rebecca, you were learning as both, specifically getting a degree in this kind of work. So did you find that there was crossover between what you were learning in your work in your academic career, or vice versa? Or do you too think that getting that hands-on work now that you are doing it as a career and when you were as a student, where do you think that crosses over, and how do you see value in both?
It definitely crossed over towards like my senior year, where I was getting more deep into like, Regedit and more sort of back-end sysadmin type of classes and information that I was learning. But I found more value in the job than actually, taking some of my forensics classes, because I use it more, today. I definitely learned a lot more hands-on when I started at UMass. They sort of gave me my ServiceNow login and said, here's Active Directory, good luck.
Isn't that scary? When I think all of us can probably speak to having been a student and then just being handed access to a piece of software that you don't think you should have access to, becoming admins of back-end systems. isn't it, speaking as a manager and supervisor now, I give access to things that I just say, okay, I trust you. Here you go take a look at this and figure out how it works. Those poor students must be petrified sometimes. I know I was when I was handed those opportunities, but it's true. If you know, I think one of the most important things that you can do, both to train a student and to get them to come back, is to give them a big piece of responsibility for something that they have to maintain themselves, a project or a responsibility that they can feel ownership towards. And a lot of, we've just been talking about that, a lot of, you're handed troubleshooting calls, you're handed ServiceNow access. Britt, I didn't want to leave you out too. What do you think of troubleshooting, hands-on training, in classroom learning? What do you find value in?
So I'm going to shameless plug real quick. I do have a newly added column to the Higher Ed AV website called Somehow I Manage, where I've written a few articles about this, and
I have read one. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have recently posted an article specifically about training and managing, but some of the things that I find most valuable in terms of training is, one, I have a Canvas course. So if you have access to anything like Canvas, Blackboard, and you can take the time, and I'm not going to lie to you, it's exhausting and time consuming, but if you can take the time to build out a course that students can interface with and use for troubleshooting purposes too, that's really valuable. I've found that the students call me significantly less now that they have something to reference if they get stuck. And I also use, this is from my teaching, the I do, we do, you do model. So I do is where the students, now that I have Canvas, they watch a video of me explaining something online. So that's I, the instructor, doing it. And then we do, where we do it together. So first, either myself or the audiovisual specialist, who's my direct report, will take any amount of students and do the task together. So, hey, we're going to build this screen and put the projector behind it, and this is how it all works. We're doing it together. And then finally, the you do model is where the student is now off on their own and they're able to do things independently. Our we do model lasts as long as a full semester, in that we will keep a new hire with returning students for an entire semester. So they're never doing something on their own. And that's been really valuable for the students themselves, where, a student who's been around for a while now has an opportunity to learn how to be a mentor and to step up into a more leadership role and feel like, hey, I'm teaching this new team member and I'm valuable to them.
Yes, we have done, we don't have it named officially. I really like your pedagogical focus there. I like that as an idea. I know that we specifically have found a lot of value. We have co-op workers, which are similar to Rebel's, having a direct internship. They work full-time for us for a semester, and we very often use them as student supervisors to be not a buffer between us, but another level of support that the part-time student workers can access. And a lot of times students, of course, feel more comfortable when they have a peer to talk to about their problem. They feel like they're working together on an issue instead of going, oh no, I have to go talk to Johanna for help again, and she's going to yell at me because I don't understand. But when they can go and talk to one of our co-ops who might have a solution to that problem, they feel more like they've solved the problem if they have worked together with another student worker, even though I've directly trained that co-op, and he might as well be me. There's value in that kind of partnership and those kind of mentorships. I absolutely agree. There is, of course, value in direct mentorship with your students as well, depending on how many student workers you have. Let's talk about that now. Let's talk about team size. So, Britt, how many students do you directly oversee and your department oversee?
My ideal staff size is 8 to 10. We currently have 7. And historically, I've overseen everything because up until June of this year, the department was just myself and one other person. I only recently received a direct report. So now that I have a direct report, I am slowly handing off some of the student management to him and teaching him the ropes, essentially, of the program that I've built. I still have a hand heavy in it. So I would say as of today, I still assist in managing all 7. And we do monthly one-on-ones with all of the students. So now that I have a partner in crime, if you will, I have split those one-on-ones with him. So he'll take some of the students, I'll take some of them. So we are interfacing, individually and giving them that direct mentorship time.
Okay. Robel, did you have a direct mentor in your internship, or did you work under the larger auspices of the whole department?
I have mentor. I had like two managers that I report, and when I was intern, we used to have a weekly meeting, 1-on-1, like a physical. So yeah.
Okay. And so, Rebecca, I know your situation is a little different because I have the AV students. I generally could have anywhere from 2 to 7 students per semester. But Rebecca oversees the entire IT help desk student workers. And that includes satellite offices that we have in both the library and in a couple of the print labs. Rebecca, what is our total for this semester? And what do you think was the highest number?
This semester is 45. Last semester, I think, was about 50. That's combining your students, but also like my co-ops, part-time students, library students, stuff like that. So this semester it is 45.
Yep. And I know that's certainly not the largest team that we've had. I think we've had up to 60 in the past when we were fully staffing the library from like 7 a.m. to midnight or something like that.
Yeah.
Ray, what about yourself? Do you have many other student workers on your team? Do you work with a very small team? You said you were the lead AV tech. So what's that mean for you? How many other student workers do you have, and how many other full-time workers do you have?
I have one more student worker. That's just us.
Just you? Any full-time staff in your group? Gosh, I pity you. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, well, we try to split the hours and have a crossover midday.
Yeah, we do the same. Okay, great. So that really gives us a wide look at the different ways that our departments are being run. I have more questions, and I could go on, all day talking about the interesting things the people have to say about management. Audience, I know that you probably have some questions. I am keeping an eye on the chat. I saw some of your discussion earlier about how many of you just in the audience were student workers in the past and then moved on to either take a job at your alma mater or take a job at another higher education facility. Please do put in any questions you have in the chat. I'm keeping an eye on it. We'll go on a little bit more while we let some of those tick up, but I didn't want to let that opportunity pass. So then how does one keep a good staff of students? How do you get your student workers to return every semester? What are the benefits that we can offer them as employers or students yourselves or those who were students? What kept you coming back to your job? What can departments do better to attract and maintain a student staff? If someone has something they want to say right away, go right ahead, and then we'll go around.
Yeah. Personally, when I started at UMass, my supervisor was absolutely amazing. Despite all of, the gross long calls that I've had with angry professors, I still stuck around just because I really liked my supervisor that much. So when I started taking over the student workers, I sort of thought of her in the back of my mind. It was kind of different because she was, a lot older than I was, and I'm more close in age to the students. So it's definitely a different type of, relationship that me and the students have. But I try to sort of project that to be, a good understanding supervisor taking care of the students. So I hope that brings people back every semester, which I think has been sort of successful, mostly successful.
I think you have been, having someone who actually wants to be managing the students I think is something that we're going to all discuss. I'm sure that every single one of us, both as a student worker or just as a full-time employee, has had someone that we are the direct report to that just doesn't want to be managing us. So if you don't want to be managing your student employees, don't. They can tell. They're human beings. I know that they're college students. Many of them may not have morphed entirely back into human beings yet. But it's in there, and even in the lizard brains at 7 a.m. when you haven't had your third cup of coffee yet, and you've been up all night doing your chemistry labs. Student workers can tell when people don't want to be interacting with them. They can tell that when they're trying to help people who are coming in and don't want to be talking to them, and they can tell when you don't want to be managing them. I think that everyone on this call who has stayed in this career has had a really great manager in the past. Rebecca, I know you've talked about yours. Britt, you mentioned yours. Rebecca, you mentioned that you had some great mentors in your manager. Ray, I assume that's the same for you, that you've had a valuable mentor, and that's why you're staying in that path.
Oh, absolutely. I'll say his name, Ryan Gray, big time.
There we go. He was the one who voluntold you for this. So, so that's something that, if you want to get good student workers who will come back every semester and who will consider continuing on into a career, get someone who wants to be managing those student workers. All right. So we have one question in the chat from Dan that is, can you provide some examples of duties and tasks that you assign to your student employees? Where's the line that you draw that you're comfortable in sending a student versus a full-time employee? Also, Ryan says that Ray gets a raise. So congratulations, Ray. That is a very interesting question. Where's the line that we draw? What kind of things do you send student workers off to do without a qualm? And what things do you go, oh, I don't know if I should send a student to do that? And what things do you say, absolutely not, we're sending a full-time employee? Ray, why don't we start with you? Because you are the only people in your group, you're only student workers. Why don't you tell us some of your highest levels of responsibilities? What makes you nervous to do by yourself as a student? Or what doesn't?
Yeah, I would say it's a little different for me because I have the background before when in audio troubleshooting, doing live shows and stuff like that. I mean, still like we had so we have one of the systems where we mix the show on an iPad and then it comes from a rack system. The WAP on that suddenly decided to fail 5 minutes before the show. And getting that figured out on all that good stuff, like, you still get curveballs and it's still, gets you a little excited.
So yeah, it's less for you about being concerned about responsibilities because you've had that direct career path experience beforehand. And considering that you're the only ones there, you don't get really a choice about what you can pass on to other people. It's you or bust.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. So anyone else want to jump on that one? What are you comfortable with sending students out to do? Rebecca, you've unmuted yourself.
Yeah, the one thing that I kind of don't like to send students to do is executive work. Anyone who's like an executive director or someone who is up in a role like that, I try not to send students to go to. Not that I don't trust them, it's more of a relationship building with the full-time employees and those directors. I feel like they kind of want to skip the middle part of the students. And sometimes I feel like they don't even see students as equals, despite the fact that, we're all adults. So any sort of work with executives, I don't like to send students to.
I feel similarly. I know that when it comes to Board of Trustees meetings, cabinet meetings, things like that, it's not that I don't believe that the students can't do that work because they have done very similar work. And oftentimes, the work that I'm sending them to do is not any more complicated in the Board of Trustees room than it is in my big auditoriums. But it's more about not letting the students, it's not about giving the students access to the executives, it's about giving the executive access to the student. The executives don't need that level of access to an individual student who's going to be there every day for the next 4 years. And sometimes the students, of course, aren't ready for that level and they need more training or they need more practice. But just as often, it's that I don't really want the executives to have to be the ones yelling at a student if something goes wrong. That just seems uncomfortable for everyone. Britt, what about yourself?
For me, so my role specifically is to hone in on the AV that's needed for events. And so that's what my student employees are doing alongside me, is they're supporting the technology we need to make an event successful. So to that end, if it's an event that involves money in any way, like admissions, alumni engagement, that's not to say that I don't allow a student to work it. You know, we have very complex admissions events where I need the student employees because the work can't get done with the limited amount of professional staff that we have. It's just that I'm also present. I don't let them do it alone.
Yep. It has to do more about giving them the support and giving them that buffer between people who can say, you know, you're fired, get out of here. You know, we go back to being a good manager, you know. Student work is one step before going out into the big world for a lot of people who aren't non-traditional students like Ray or like myself. So if you want people to keep coming back and if you want them to stay in that career, you need to be the one to say, hey, it's not your job to get yelled at by someone who can have an actual impact on your education and your career. That's my job. It's my job to get yelled at by executives, not yours. So Robel, what about you yourself? Was there anything that when you were an intern, people didn't let you do or you didn't want to do because it worried you?
I'll say like heavy issue, like when we have a network system failing, like that's not our job to fix. That's an IT people, and that I have to report it to my managers.
Yeah, network and
as far-
security
yeah.
can be an interesting
Yeah.
place where it's because student workers may not be legally allowed to have access to some of the information that you can get in those systems. That is a line that many departments draw there when it comes to security or when it comes to in-depth networking and account solutions. Okay, another question we have here is, how do you compete with the rising pay wages at other job positions inside and outside the institution, especially if the institution doesn't allow you to raise your rates? So I know that of course there are always two separate issues here. There's the issue of work study for students if you are on a federally funded campus, and then there's of course the option of the department paying the students. Britt, how do you manage it at Moravian?
At Moravian, we don't use the term student worker, they're student employees, and we do use federal funding, but we also use department funding.
Okay. Yep, that is something similar. We have multiple options available for different students. And because we need so many, like Rebecca was saying, we can have up to 45 students working in different positions. Not everyone who comes to us is going to have work study as an option. So, you know, what do you do? I know that in Massachusetts, for example, the minimum wage went up to be competitive with different job positions at your own institution. What do you do? Ray, are you a work study student yourself, or does your department pay you directly?
I guess I'm not familiar with the terms, but I'm considered a student worker, but I do get paid, yes.
Do you get paid directly by your department, or is that part of your financial aid package?
No, directly from the apartment.
Okay.
Department,
yeah. Yep. So a lot of the times your department, for example, won't allow you to make those kind of wage changes. And a lot of the times also your ability to schedule your students is dictated by the federal government rules for work study programs. For example, our student workers are only allowed to work for 16 hours a week if their position is funded by federal work study. So a lot of the times you can't. There are many situations in which you cannot, you don't have the ability to control that kind of situation, or you don't have the ability to schedule or change those for your students. So how do you keep those students anyway? Britt, Rebecca, what are other things that you can do to keep those students with you if you can't change their wages a lot, or if you can't change their hours a lot?
Right. So the question ultimately comes down to is, as Jason phrased it, how do you compete? Like, how do you prove that your job is more valuable than the cashier job at the local grocery store that's going to pay them more than this really
Especially
complex
now,
thing?
post-pandemic, yeah.
Yeah. And that's that you have to create an experience that is so valuable. Like, that's what the competition is. And so have things that any employee would want, have a common purpose or a mission statement, have clear guidelines that people can rally around and be passionate about, and be passionate yourself. You know, we've already spoken about how if you don't want to be a manager, they're going to tell, and the vibe's going to be off, and you've lost them. So you have to just find the ways, and it might be different for you yourself, your department, your campus, but you got to figure out where the vibe is and make it really good.
Rebecca, what do you think?
Honestly, pretty much the same. I know that the tech spot hires at a little bit of a higher rate than the rest of the campus because of the experience and the type of work. A lot of the other jobs on campus are like, bookstore, you're restocking shelves, you're checking people out, you're at the info hub, you're just telling people directions. But I feel like at the help desk, it's definitely more of a lot more responsibilities, especially, dealing with accounts, identity verification, going out and, to different offices and helping other users. So the pay definitely keeps people, but then also just the general experience, having a good time, pretty much everything that Britt said keeps the students from, leaving, keeps people staying.
Rebel, I know your situation was different because of being an intern rather than a student employee. Did you receive different amounts of money for level of experience, or was it just all part of your program?
I would say when I heard the conversion and they told me how much money they will pay me, I was just excited about it, about the jobs and the money, because I did a research about it, and the industry was very growing, and you can just work at any company you want. And like I said, I was just working side job to cover my my bills and stuff like that. And I was just excited about the job. I was not into the money, but the amount they were gonna pay me, though, I was just that I did not expect it, but it happened because I was passionate about it and I was doing everything. So it was very excited.
So you saw that the experience that you were getting was, in particular for you, more important because you were looking to make it a career?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, there you go. There's one answer right there. How do you
Right.
keep your students interested? How do you keep them from coming back?
And interact with, especially if you're a manager, interact with the students what they like. And when I came first, and then my manager was like, what do you like about computer? And I told him troubleshooting. And my first project was, here, install this Mac Minis. And I installed going around the campus, and then that developed my knowledge of how the Mac Minis or how the technology in the campus work. And then I went to configure, and I level up and elevate my AT knowledge. So it would be good to know your students and take surveys, what they like and what they don't.
Yep, that's a very important thing as well, is if you want to keep your students coming back after you've done that first semester of training, give them a project that they're passionate about or interested in. It doesn't even have to be relevant to their academic career. It can just be something that they think is interesting. That's value to students. Students, of course, want money. They're always willing to, many of them are always willing to work overtime, extra hours. If it's legal, of course, we have some students who cannot work more than 16 hours because they are international students. There is a question in the chat about how many hours are your student workers available per week. As we briefly discussed earlier, sometimes that's limited by federal work study. Sometimes it's limited by federal law. Ray, what about yourself as a a non-traditional student employee? How many hours a week do you work?
I usually complete about 30.
So you're practically basically a part-time employee at the university then.
Yeah, with the hours, but it shifts basically just dependent on the events, how many we have a week. So 25.
Yes, of course, that is certainly the case for us as well. I know that with our AV staff, there are many times that I will take the hit and get yelled at by student financial services because I've let my work study students work more than 16 hours that week because I'm so desperate for AV staff over the weekend or at commencement. I'll just say, I don't care if they yell at you, you can send them to me and they'll yell at me. I don't care. I need you. Britt, how about you? How often are your students able or willing to work for hours per week?
Since we also use department funds, we typically are not limited in how many hours they're allowed to work. So then it just comes down to how much do they want to work. And I'm very honest with the students when I recruit and onboard and let them know it's feast or famine because we're supporting events. Sometimes there are a lot of events, sometimes not so much. So, you have to be willing and able to be flexible in that way. And I have some students who are clocking 20, 25 hours a week. And then I have some students who are working 1 or 2 hours a week. And that fluctuates among the staff. Sometimes that student who didn't work so much last week is now going to pick up more this week. So it's entirely dependent on their schedules, what they feel comfortable working, their time with not just their class, but their extracurriculars and their homework and all sorts of stuff. The way I structure the work is I use our department Google Calendar. And I put in there, this is the event, all of the information, and they look at that and they sign up for it. I'm not assigning shifts. They tell me when they want to show up and then they show up.
We have something similar ourselves for our AV events. All right, it looks like we have about 5 minutes left in this particular panel. So let's just maybe do a little wrap up, last thoughts. So we've discussed our particular paths into our careers here. In AV and IT, or the change in our paths in Ray's circumstance. Excuse me. We've discussed how do you train your students? What different paths are available? What do students find value in their positions? How do you keep your team of students? We've talked about the value and importance of having a manager that students relate to and can go to and who actually wants to be there. Any last thoughts from any of you about either something your department does specifically or just a cool little story that you have about your time as a student employee or as a manager? What's something, a last little takeaway from all of you? Rebecca, you want to go first?
Sure. I guess, from when I was a student worker, definitely the friends that I made at the help desk sort of encouraged me to keep working there. It was a very small team, but we were all very close. So I think encouraging the bonds between students is something that's super important, and stuff that I see even, my student workers, maybe they're in completely different majors, but now all of a sudden they're hanging out after class. I think it's
Isn't that so
really
nice to see?
It's awesome to see just new relationships, friendships just blooming just because of, we're all connecting each other. I think it's very nice to see.
Anyone else? A last thought of some kind?
I would say at the end of the day, just make sure you're treating your student employees like they are employees. Like, create an environment that it's clear this is a job and I respect your time and I respect you and I respect your work, and make that very clear to them and just create and foster that environment for them, meet their needs. And I know that, especially for me, we're working events, it has to feel perfect. There's that ever reaching for perfection, but they are at the end of the day students. So I have to allow them to fail forward and I just have to give grace to them and just, hone in on those soft skills for yourself.
Very important. Agreed. Rebel, any last thoughts?
I'll say appreciate them, even the little thing they have done. When we have call and they go take care of it, appreciate them and tell them they are doing great job, and that will elevate them. That will make them happy even to keep coming, and ask them about the care, if they are happy with it, if they want to keep in as an AV, and give them a resource, whatever they can be successful in that field and that history they were interested in.
Direct encouragement is so important and so valuable, especially for students who this might be their first real job. Ray, what about yourself? Any last thoughts?
I would say just remembering the other things you bring to the students. Oftentimes in this workplace, so for some of them, it's their first time in a workplace. So setting that standard of professionalism and work ethic and how to handle responsibilities, that's also something very valuable that is given and that I've gotten and received from my organization. Especially, it always surprises me, I'm not sure why anymore, how well people respond to responsibility.
I
given
agree.
as they can handle. Yeah.
Yeah, give them as much as they can handle and let them screw up, let them find out where their feet are, treat them like real employees and real human beings, and they will become that. They will become real employees. They will become responsible human beings. Not everyone is going to be the perfect fit. You can't be afraid to discipline students who screw up. You have to treat them like real employees. If they treat the job like it's a real job, you have to treat it like it's a real job as well. But we also have to remember that this is a college campus. This might be their first time in a real career. So don't let the failings of students discourage you from continuing to hire students. Let their energy inspire you. College students are so funny. They have, they have so much to learn. They have so much to give to your departments. There's so much value in hiring students that no matter all the headaches that they've given me in the past, I would never trade it in for all the good things that they have done for us. I want to say thank you to everyone for coming to the panel. Thank you, panelists. I really appreciate you spending time with us. Thank you for volunteering or for being voluntold to join us today. Thank you for audience members for your questions, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thank you, everyone. Have a good one.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you.